Greetings and welcome to this practice WOD in which you're going to construct a data model for a library, one of the classic data modeling exercises. If you've taken a database class or walked past a data modeling class, you probably had to do this entity relationship diagram before, but you know, the purpose here is not to do a database class. It's really just to help you learn how to use this diagramming tool. I'm assuming that you have some prior database design experience, and if not, you can probably fake it enough to get through this class because we're not doing really complicated data models, but your models will probably be less performant, less scalable, etc. Anyway, prior to starting this WOD, it's important to look at the model design guidelines because we're using this free tool called Lucidchart to document the design of your model. And there's some things about it, like you want to make sure that you use crow's foot notation and you use this crow's foot notation that has both the minimum and maximum cardinalities, not this kind of singleton version, okay? And then there's some stuff for how you define entities and so forth. So read through this before you start. And what we'll do is read through this description and then figure out what the diagram is going to look like. So we got this library, and people can take out books on loan. You can loan up to 5 books at a time. You have multiple copies of the same book, and you can do reservations to get a book when they're all out already on loan. Okay, and so what we have to look, it's very important to keep in mind kind of what are the functions, what are the queries you're going to be making in the database. So we need to figure out whether a book has been whether a book being returned has been reserved, so whether there's a reservation for a given book, whether given a borrower, whether they have a particular book out on loan. So we need connections between books and reservations, between borrowers and books, whether a copy of a particular book or title, that's the other thing when you're reading these natural language descriptions, like in this 4th bullet, it says check whether a copy of a particular title is loaned out or not. Title is really a synonym for book. So part of the process of data modeling is you'll find that there's, people refer to the same entity in different ways, and you got to disambiguate that. Check which reservations should receive the newly turned in books. So there has to be relationships between books and reservations. And then, and this is kind of crucial for this one, the history of loans for a book and the history of reservations for a book, which means we have to keep around every single loan that we gave out and every single reservation that we make. So that means those things are going to be entities. Okay, so we have to construct an ER diagram using Lucidcharts of the library domain model. And in order to do that, we have to start the timer. Where is our timer? I don't see our timer. So let me find it. I think it's called time. There it is. Okay, so we'll start. And we have to use Lucidcharts to create a chart ERD library. So let's go to a new tab. Go to Google Docs. And we're going to say new. And then we'll say a new Lucidchart. And we want to do an entity relationship diagram. So we'll start here. Okay, and then this is supposed to be called, let me see what it's supposed to be called. It's supposed to be, I'm going to move this guy over so it's easy to go back and forth. Because you can do a propeller option arrow to go back and forth between tabs in Chrome. So anyway, this is supposed to be ERD library. ERD library. That's the name of this thing. And then let's find our entity relationship. Okay, so we don't have the ER diagramming thing. So the way you do that is you say more shapes, and up pops this thing, and we got to click entity relationship and do save, and now we have them. Okay, this is key because it has all the the cool crow's feet notations and so forth. So now what we got to do is figure out what the entities and the relationships are among them. So obviously, book is one. So let's start by having this book guy, and we'll double click here and we'll say book. Okay, and then what else? And we have a book, and then we have copies of books. Okay, so let's make another entity. Okay, and we'll call this copy. And then we need to make a relationship between them. So we draw a line, and then once we've drawn that line, it's going to fill it in with the various entities. So the various crow's feet. They give some sample crow's feet on both sides. So the question is, and these are the wrong kind of crow's feet because you notice they don't say the minimum. But what is the relationship between books and copies? Let's assume that we could lose all our copies. So in that case, we can say that a book can have 0 to many copies, but that a copy can be a copy for exactly one book. Okay, so that's how we might say that. All right, so let's go back here. And then a book can also be reserved. So let's make a entity for a reservation. Let's double click here. I'll do the fields later, but right now we want to just get these guys. Okay, and so what's the relationship between books and well, a book can have 0 or more reservations. 0 to many reservations. Whoops, I'm in the wrong area here. A book can have 0 to many reservations, but a reservation, again, can be associated with only a single book. Okay. So let's now, okay, so that looks good. And then there's this idea of a loan, right? Which is definitely something we need an entity for because we got to keep the history. Well, what do you loan out? You don't loan out books. You actually loan out an actual physical copy of a book. So let's make us an entity, and we'll call this loan. And then we want to make a relationship. And so a copy, there can be many loans for any given copy. Whoops, again, I'm on the wrong one. There can be many loans for a given copy, but any given loan is associated with it exactly one copy, right? So we've got a lot of these exactly one and 0 or many instances shaping up here. Okay, so let's go back. We got reservations, we got loans, we got books, we got copies. The only thing that's missing is the people. And here, they talk about student or faculty members at the beginning. But there's really no place in terms of the queries that the library staff has. They never really care whether or not the person is a student or faculty member. So it's kind of up to you what you want to do in this case. Given that we don't really need to know a student or faculty member, we could decide, well, forget it. I'm just going to have a generic person. Or you could think, well, maybe in some future thing, I'm going to need to know this. In my case, I think you don't want to kind of arbitrarily make your things more complicated than you have to. So I'm going to say my gut feeling here is we're just going to go with a student or faculty maybe being a field in the patron the patron model and not an actual independent entity. Which is good if you're not trying to say you do reports like on all the faculties that have done X, Y, and Z, excluding all the students and so forth. And you can always eventually kind of probably get all the information you need either way. The problem is just kind of performance. But anyway, for the purpose of this, I'm just going to say we got a patron, and then a patron can take out many loans. Can have 0 or many loans active. Doggone it, I always guess wrong. But every loan is associated with exactly one patron. Okay, and it's actually exactly the same. We want to be able to relate patrons to reservations, and the reservation the reservation, each individual reservation is associated with exactly one patron. You can't have a reservation without a patron. But a patron can have 0 to many reservations. Okay? So that looks pretty good. And the only, if we look through this, we see this one last thing, be loaned up to 5 books at a time. Okay? Now, if we go back and we look at our entity relationship diagram, sometimes you'll see things like they'll have a little number you can add next to the crow's feet that specifies, or 0.5 or something like that to specify the actual cardinality. This notation doesn't have that, and so if you want to provide that in there, which is, they do specify it, so it might be something you want to do. The best way to do it with Lucidcharts is to make one of these little note guys and say something like, 5 loans max per patron. And then you can, resize this to make it as small as it can be, and you can stick it right there. Maybe not stick it right there. Maybe stick it right there. That's not bad. Okay, so that's... so let's see. Can we check whether a book being returned has been reserved? Okay, so we have a book, and then from a book we can look up all its reservations, so yes. Does a borrower have a particular book out on loan? So we take a patron. We can look up all their loans, find out whether they have it. That works. We can get there. Which books are out on loan to a particular borrower? So if we get a book, from the books we can find all the copies. From all the copies we can look up all the loans, and then see whether or not the patron is there. So that's kind of circuitous, but we can eventually get there. Whether a copy of a particular title is loaned out or not, that's easy. Just, you got your title, you find your copies. Oh, and then see whether or not it's loaned or not. And then which reservation should retrieve the newly turned in book? Whoops, I went too far. And so we got a book. We look up all its reservations. Oh, you know what we didn't do? We forgot to put in the fields. Okay, so ISBN, title, and author. Gee whiz. Okay, so ISBN, title, and I knew there was something wrong, and author. Okay, that's our book. And then for a copy, we might have just the copy number. It's not too much you want for a copy. From the loan, you want the date out, date back. For a reservation, you might want the date made and date redeemed. That way you can figure out whether a reservation is active or not. And then patron, we probably have the name and maybe status, like, faculty, student, or something like that. Okay, sorry about that. All right, so let's go back because, why did I care? Which reservation should retrieve the newly turned in book? So for that, we get a book, we go to reservations, and then we find all the ones that haven't been redeemed, and then we sort them in the order of which they were made. And that's how we figure out which reservation should get it. And then the history of loans, history of reservations is super simple. We're just going to retrieve all these loan objects and all these reservation objects, and that's the history. Okay, so last thing we have to do, we see that all the operations can be performed. Download a PNG with your description. So to do that, we say File, Download as, PNG, Crop to Content, Print Quality, Download. Okay, and it chugs away for a minute, and then we get the following. Here's our nice little entity relationship diagram for the library model. Not bad, I'd say. All right, so that's that WAD, 11, let's say 12 minutes. That's really generous. If you didn't do all the talking that I did, you could probably cruise it out a lot more quickly. But I hope you found this useful and that you'll see, using Lucidchart, really nice way to build nice little entity relationship diagrams.